A sailor is sick and the sea won't stop moving. It's 2,000 years ago. His ship has been at open water for weeks. His stomach churns with every wave, and there's no doctor aboard, no medicine chest, no way to reach land for days. He's pale, weak, barely able to stand, so the men around him do the only thing they know. They dig into the cargo, break off a piece of a pale, twisted root, and press it into his hands. Chew, they tell him, slowly. Ginger, that's the medicine. A root so ordinary that today you can buy a piece for the price of a candy bar and forget it in the back of your fridge. But for thousands of years, people didn't forget ginger. They carried it across deserts. They sailed into storms for it. They paid fortunes for it. And here's the strangest part of the whole story. They were never fully sure why it worked. They just knew, somehow, that they trusted it. Different empires trusted it. Different healers trusted it. People who never met, who spoke different languages and lived thousands of miles apart, all reached for the same small root, and even called it by almost the same name. This is the real mystery. And it isn't why does ginger taste good? Why did people on opposite ends of the earth, who had never heard of one another, all come to trust and treasure this one root? And how did a plant you can hold in one hand end up quietly tying their worlds together? The question is bigger than a spice. It's a question about us, about how strangers separated by oceans can end up sharing the very same things without ever meaning to. And the answer takes us from a sick sailor to a forest that no longer exists, to a Roman table, to a kitchen you might be standing in right now. Let's begin where the whole story began, in the quiet of a forest, long before anyone had ever tasted it. Chapter 1. Before ginger traveled. Picture a world without the things you take for granted. No fridge, no freezer, no medicine cabinet, no spice rack. For thousands of years, that was normal life. And it came with three big problems. The first problem was food. It was often plain: grains, beans, boiled roots. Meals filled your belly, but they rarely made your mouth come alive. People wanted flavor. They craved it, the way you might crave something sweet on a boring afternoon. The second problem was staying well. People got sick a lot. Bad stomachs, fevers, aches that came in the cold. There were no pills, no pharmacies. When your body hurt, you looked around for whatever might help. You tried leaves, bark, seeds, and roots. You learned by trying. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The third problem was distance. Travel was slow and dangerous. If you journeyed far, your food had to last. But fresh food spoiled fast. Meat rotted. It could even make you sick. So people were always searching for anything that could keep food safe a little longer or hide the taste when it went bad. Flavor, medicine, keeping food. Three needs, always tugging at people. And somewhere in the warm, wet forests of Asia, part of the answer was already growing. It just hadn't been found yet. It didn't look like much. Long green stalks reaching up toward the shade, narrow leaves, and hidden under the soil, a fat, pale, twisted stem that most people would have walked right past. But when someone finally broke it open, everything changed. The smell hit first, sharp and warm and fresh. Then the taste. A bite that tingled on the tongue and spread heat down the throat, all the way to the belly. It could wake up a dull meal. It could warm you on a cold night. And people quickly noticed it seemed to settle an upset stomach. One thing to remember before we go on. Before ginger connected civilizations, it didn't belong to anyone. It belonged to the forest. Chapter 2. The root people refused to leave behind. Now, here is a mystery that still puzzles scientists today. If you go looking for wild ginger, the exact kind we cook with, growing free in the forest right now, you won't find it. It isn't there. The ginger in your kitchen doesn't grow on its own in the wild anymore. Not anywhere on Earth. That sounds impossible, but it's true. Over thousands of years, people shaped this plant so much and grew it so carefully that it became something that needs human hands to survive. Every ginger plant today is grown from a piece of another ginger plant. We plant it, we dig it up, we plant it again, break the chain, and it would slowly disappear, which tells you something powerful. People didn't just find ginger, they kept it. Generation after generation, on purpose. They refused to let it go. But where did that begin? Most evidence points to the warm islands and coasts of Southeast Asia. This is where people first started growing ginger for real, choosing the best plants, tending them, and passing them on. Historians don't agree on every detail, and some of the trail is lost to time. But the deep roots of this story seem to reach into that green, tropical corner of the world. And from there, ginger got on the move, thanks to some of the greatest sailors the world had ever seen. Long ago, seafaring people set out across the open ocean in canoes. They traveled farther than almost anyone before them, island to island, all across the vast blue Pacific. And when they packed for these journeys, they didn't just bring food and tools, they brought their most important plants. Ginger was one of them, a canoe plant. Something so useful you would not dream of sailing without it. Picture how much people had to love this route to carry it into the unknown. Onto a small boat, across water with no land in sight, to islands they had never seen. But ginger was easy to love, because ginger was easy to carry. You didn't need seeds or careful planting. You just brought a piece of the root. It stayed alive for a long time. You could dry it, and dried ginger lasted even longer, sometimes for years. It didn't spoil quickly like fruit or meat. It packed small and light. So it traveled. It reached India. It reached China. In both places, people didn't just cook with it. They built whole traditions of healing around it. We'll get to that soon. For now, hold on to one simple idea. People didn't only eat ginger, they carried it. And a thing that people carry everywhere is a thing that is about to change the world. Chapter 3. The Spice That Connected Civilizations. Let's step into a market, thousands of years ago. Close your eyes and picture it. Dusty ground, crowded stalls, voices shouting prices in languages you don't know. The smell of animals, smoke, and dozens of foods cooking at once. And somewhere in that crowd, a man is loading up his animals and his boat for a very long trip. He is a merchant. His whole life is buying in one place and selling in another. And in his sacks, wrapped and packed with great care, is dried ginger. To him, this root is not a snack. It is treasure. Because he knows something simple and powerful. What is common where he lives is rare somewhere far away. And rare things are worth a fortune. So he sets out. For weeks, maybe months, he moves. Over land, his animals kick up dust on hot roads. By sea, his ship rocks over endless waves. He sleeps badly. He eats little. He watches the horizon for danger. A single storm could sink everything he owns. A single band of thieves could take it all. And notice what he does not tell people along the way. He doesn't say where the ginger truly comes from. Traders like him guarded that secret. If buyers knew exactly where a spice grew, they might try to go get it themselves. So the sellers kept quiet, or spun wild tales about faraway lands and strange dangers. Anything to keep the true source a mystery. For a long time, the people paying for ginger had no real idea where on earth it began. The mystery was part of the price. But if he makes it, the reward is huge. Because when he finally reaches a faraway market and opens those sacks, people crowd around. They have never smelled anything like it, or they have only smelled it a few times in their lives. They will pay, and pay well, for a taste of somewhere else. This is how it worked, again and again, across the ancient world. In India, ginger became part of daily life and daily healing. In China, healers gave it a special place in their medicine. And between these places, and far beyond them, ran the merchants. Buying, selling, carrying, connecting. That word matters, connecting. Because every time a trader carried ginger into a new market, two worlds touched. The people who grew it and the people who bought it now had a reason to know each other. They shared a road. They shared a price. They shared a taste. Ginger became a thread, a thin, invisible thread running from forest to farm to port to market to kitchen. And that thread tied strangers together across enormous distances. A thought worth keeping. Sometimes civilizations meet because armies arrive. And sometimes, quietly, they meet because a merchant arrives with a sack of ginger on his back. Chapter 4. The same cure in places that never met. Let's talk about something stranger than flavor. People believed ginger could heal. That's not the surprising part. Lots of plants got used as medicine. Here's the surprising part. People used it the same way, in places that had never met each other. Look at how far apart these worlds were. A healer in China, a doctor in India, a physician in Greece. They didn't share a language. They didn't share a religion. Most of them didn't even know the others existed. They were separated by mountains, deserts, and oceans that took years to cross. And yet, when you look at what they believed about ginger, you see the same idea, over and over. In China, healers called it a warming food, something to drive cold out of the body. They reached for it for chills, for weak stomachs, for the aches of winter. In India, inside the healing tradition of Ayurveda, ginger was treasured too, valued so highly that some texts described it as a near-universal helper, used for digestion, for aches, for warming a cold body back to comfort. Then travel west, all the way to Greece and Rome. And what do the doctors there write down? Almost the same thing. Ginger warms the body. Ginger settles the stomach. It goes into their medicines and their syrups. Stop and feel how odd that is. 3 corners of the ancient world. No phones. No books shared between them. No way to compare notes. And they landed on the same belief about the same root. How? Because ginger itself carried the idea. The root traveled the trade routes, and the story of what it could do traveled right along with it, whispered from merchant to buyer, from healer to healer, across every border. The plant didn't just cross the world, its reputation did. That's what a connector really is. Not just a thing that moves, a thing that makes faraway strangers believe the same thing. Now, honesty time. Old belief is not the same as proof. Those ancient healers were guessing. They noticed, they tried, they passed the story on. Sometimes old guesses hold real truth. Sometimes they don't. So what does modern science actually say? Scientists have tested ginger, and the clearest finding is this. It can genuinely help with certain kinds of nausea, that queasy, sick-to-the-stomach feeling. The best evidence is for nausea in pregnancy. There's decent evidence for motion sickness and for feeling sick after an operation. Inside ginger are natural compounds called gingerols and shogaols. Scientists think these are part of why it can calm an uneasy stomach, working on the same body signals that make us feel sick. But scientists stay careful. Many studies were small. Some results were mixed. For some illnesses, the evidence is weak or unclear. Ginger is a gentle helper, not a cure, and not magic. Still, look at the whole picture. Long ago, 3 separated civilizations trusted the same root for nearly the same reasons. And thousands of years later, science quietly confirmed that at least part of that shared, borderless hunch was right. They agreed before they could even talk to each other. That's connection. Chapter 5. The Spice That Crossed Oceans. Now the story gets bigger, much bigger. Because ginger was about to cross the widest gaps in the ancient world and land on the tables of one of history's greatest empires. Picture the sea routes that stitched the old world together. Ships hugging the coasts of the Indian Ocean. Traders moving between India, Arabia, and Africa. Goods passing from hand to hand, port to port, like a message whispered across half the planet. For a long time, much of this trade ran through Arab merchants. They were masters of these routes. They knew the winds, they knew the harbors, they knew the buyers. Ginger and other spices flowed through their hands on the long trip west. And far away, in the Roman Empire, people were desperate to buy. Rome loved spices, not only for food, but for perfumes, for medicines, for religious offerings. And ginger was among the prizes they craved. But getting it to Rome was an epic journey. Follow one piece of ginger. It starts in the warm east. It's traded onto a ship. It crosses the Indian Ocean, sails up the Red Sea, and reaches a busy port. From there, it's carried overland to a great river, then floated down toward the sea again, and finally loaded onto another ship bound for Rome's harbors. Now imagine you are a sailor on one of those ships. You've been at sea for weeks. Your hands are rough from the ropes. You miss solid ground. You miss your family. But you signed on for this journey, because if the cargo makes it, there's good money waiting at the other end. The sun is brutal. The water stretches out forever. Your ship is packed with precious cargo, and every wave is a small gamble. For days, the sea is calm, almost peaceful. You let yourself hope. Then one night the wind changes. The sky turns black. Waves climb like walls. The ship groans and tips. Men shout. Ropes snap. Rain slaps your face so hard you can barely see. Everyone grabs whatever they can and fights to keep the cargo and their lives from sliding into the deep. All night you hold on, praying to see the morning. Some ships didn't survive nights like that. They vanished, cargo and all, swallowed by the sea. Nobody back home ever learned exactly what happened to them. That was the risk. That was always the risk. And yet the ships kept sailing, because the reward was worth it. By the time a piece of ginger reached a fine Roman table, it had traveled an incredible distance. It had crossed one of the largest oceans on Earth. It had changed hands many times. It had survived storms that killed others. So remember this the next time you picture a Roman dinner. Every little piece of ginger on that table had traveled farther than most of the people sitting around it would travel in their entire lives. The root was a bigger explorer than the people who ate it. Chapter 6. The word that proves it. Let's slow everything down now, because this is the heart of the whole story. Remember how I said those faraway peoples, who never met each other, called ginger by almost the same name? That was not a coincidence. It's the closest thing this whole story has to proof. Let me show you what's hiding inside that word. Go back to where this root began, in the warm lands of South Asia. Long, long ago, people there had a name for it. In an ancient language called Sanskrit, the word sounded something like Shringavera, and it meant, roughly, horn body, because of the root's bumpy, pointed, horn-like shape. Now watch what happens to that word as the root starts to travel. The traders carry ginger west, and they can't carry the root without also carrying its name, so the name goes with it, mouth to mouth, market to market. But every new set of lips bends it a little. The ancient Greeks hear it and say something like Zingiberis. The Romans shorten it toward Zingiber. It slides into Old French, softening. It crosses into English, and after centuries of use, it wears down into the plain little word you say today, Shringavera, Zingiberis. Zingiber, ginger. Say them in a row, and you can almost hear it happening, like the same stone tumbling down a river, getting smoother at every bend, but never becoming a different stone. Here is the wow. When you stand in your kitchen and say ginger, you are speaking a word that began in South Asia thousands of years ago. It has been passed unbroken through the mouths of Indian farmers, Arab traders, Greek doctors, Roman cooks, French bakers, and English shopkeepers. Every one of them handed it to the next. You didn't invent that word. You inherited it. From people you'll never meet, who lived in worlds you'll never see. And think about what that means. Those civilizations never sat down together. They never signed anything. Many of them never even knew the others existed, but they all touched the same root, and they all passed along nearly the same word for it. That word is a footprint, proof that the root walked through every one of their lives. Most things that connect the world are loud: wars, empires, kings. But this connection is silent, and it's sitting in your mouth right now. A single small word, worn smooth by thousands of miles and thousands of years, quietly linking you to everyone who ever passed it along. Some spices become luxury. This one became something stranger and deeper. It became a word the whole world agreed to keep. Chapter 7. When Europe wanted ginger. Centuries pass, and Europe falls hard for ginger. By the Middle Ages, ginger had become one of the most wanted spices in Europe. People adored it, but there was a problem. It was wildly expensive. Remember, Ginger didn't grow in Europe. It came from far away, through a long chain of traders, and every hand it passed through added to the price. By the time it reached a European market, it had become a symbol of wealth. How expensive was it? At one point, a single pound of ginger could cost about as much as a live sheep. Read that again. A pound of a spice for the price of a whole animal you could raise for wool, milk, and meat. That's how precious this root had become. So ginger was a food for the rich, and it slipped into their sweets. Europeans began mixing ginger into cakes and treats, and out of this came something you probably know very well: gingerbread. The story of gingerbread is old and a little tangled. People had made sweet, spiced honey cakes since ancient times. Over the centuries, cooks in Europe turned ginger into cakes and cookies, sometimes shaped into fancy figures. Gingerbread showed up at fairs and festivals. There were even special gingerbread fairs, whole markets built around this one spiced treat. People shaped it into animals, flowers, and little figures, and gave it as a gift for luck. There's a charming old custom where a lady might hand a piece of gingerbread to her favorite knight before a contest, to bring him good fortune. Some people even ate little gingerbread husbands, hoping it might help them find a real one. That's how much joy and meaning people wrapped up in this one spice. That warm, spicy smell of gingerbread you might know from the holidays. It's the smell of a spice that once cost a fortune. But all that expense created a hunger for something more than flavor. Europe's leaders and traders looked at these sky-high spice prices and had a bold thought. What if they could skip the middlemen? What if they could sail straight to the source, buy spices cheaply, and bring them home themselves? So ships set out to find new sea routes to the lands of spices. This was one of the sparks behind the great age of exploration. Now, let's be fair and accurate here. Ginger alone did not send those ships across the world. It was part of a much bigger picture. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, gold, and the dream of new trade, all of it pulled explorers onto the sea. Ginger was one prize among many, but it was a real prize. Once European ships reached the spice lands, powerful trading nations began to compete. The Portuguese, the Dutch, the English, each racing to control the flow of spices and the fortunes that came with them. So look closely at what was really happening. When people paid those enormous prices, they weren't only paying for taste, they were paying for distance, for the sheer, staggering journey the spice had made. They were buying the miles. Chapter 8. The route that never stopped traveling. For most of this story, ginger moved slowly, on foot, on camels, on wooden ships pushed by wind. Then the world sped up. New machines changed everything. Steamships crossed oceans without waiting for the wind. Railways carried goods across whole countries in days instead of months. Suddenly, moving a spice across the planet wasn't a life-risking adventure anymore. It was just business. And ginger loved this new world. Remember, ginger was always easy to move. It stored well, it dried well, it didn't spoil quickly. Now, with fast ships and trains, it could travel farther and cheaper than ever before. The route that had once cost a fortune slowly became something almost anyone could buy. Farmers in warm parts of the world grew more and more of it. Ginger spread far beyond where it started, into new countries and new farms across the tropics. What was once rare became common, but the biggest leap was still to come. For thousands of years, ginger had only ever known half the world: Asia, Arabia, Africa, Europe. It had never once touched the Americas, because until now, the two halves of the planet barely knew each other existed. Then European ships crossed the Atlantic, and they carried ginger with them. In the warm islands of the Caribbean, the root sank into new soil and thrived, tended by many different hands far from home. Soon, ginger grown on one side of the world was sailing back across the ocean to the other. Look at what just happened. Ginger had connected the last two pieces of the map, the old world and the new world, tied together by the same small root growing in both. The connector had finally reached the whole planet. Today, ginger is a global crop. India grows the most of it by far. Other countries like China, Nepal, Nigeria, and Indonesia grow huge amounts too. Millions of pounds move around the world every year. And it comes in more forms than ever. There's fresh ginger, the knobby root you slice at home. There's dried ginger. There's ginger ground into fine powder for baking. There's ginger brewed into tea, and ginger candy, and ginger stirred into fizzy drinks. Meanwhile, scientists kept studying it, testing those old beliefs with real experiments. As we saw, they found genuine evidence that ginger can ease certain kinds of nausea, while being careful not to promise more than the science shows. The ancient trust in ginger and the modern testing of ginger now sit side by side. So the route never really stopped traveling, it just changed its ride. From canoe to camel to sailing ship to steamship to railway, to the trucks and planes that carry it today. From a forest treasure to a royal luxury, to something sitting quietly in almost every kitchen on earth. Same route, same warm, spicy bite. A journey that simply never ended. Chapter 9. The spice in your kitchen. Now come back to today. To right now. To a kitchen you might know. Look around, and ginger is everywhere, if you know where to look. It's in the sizzle of a stir-fry, where a few slices hit a hot pan and fill the whole house with that sharp, fresh smell. It's in countless dishes across Asia, where cooks reach for it as naturally as reaching for salt. It's in Indian cooking, crushed into curries and sauces, part of the deep flavor that makes those meals unforgettable. It's in sweets, in cookies, in gingerbread shaped like little people during the holidays, the same treat that once belonged only to the rich. It's in drinks, in ginger tea sipped when you feel under the weather, in fizzy ginger ale and spicy ginger beer, in the warm mug someone hands you when your stomach feels off. And it's in the health aisle, where ginger shows up in the middle of modern wellness trends, in shots, teas and supplements, riding a wave of people looking for natural remedies. Some of that is backed by real science, like ginger's calming effect on nausea. Some of it is just hope and marketing. It's smart to know the difference. What's remarkable is this. You can walk into an ordinary supermarket, almost anywhere in the world, and buy a piece of ginger for a tiny amount of money. No danger, no storms, no pirates, no months at sea. You just pick it up and put it in your basket. And that simple, boring moment, buying ginger without a second thought, is actually the end of one of the longest stories in human history. A story that took thousands of years and thousands of miles to reach your hand. The story didn't end in some ancient market. It didn't end on a Roman table or at a medieval fair. It ended in your kitchen. Today, with you. Conclusion. So let's finish where all of this was always heading. A kitchen. Quiet. Ordinary. Maybe yours. Someone stands at the counter and picks up a piece of ginger. They slice it, thin and easy, the way people have for thousands of years. They drop it into a mug and pour hot water over the top. Steam curls up. That warm, spicy smell fills the air. Nothing about it feels special. It's just a cup of tea on a normal day. But look closer at that little slice of root. Hidden inside it are the forests of Asia, where its ancestors first grew in the shade. The early people who found it, loved it, and refused to leave it behind. The sailors who carried it across the ocean in canoes. The farmers who tended it. The healers in China and India who trusted it. The merchants who risked everything to carry it to strangers. Inside that slice are Roman markets and ocean storms, Arab traders and medieval fairs. A pound of spice once worth a whole sheep. Explorers chasing the taste of faraway places, steamships and railways, and the long, slow journey from luxury to everyday. And inside it is something quieter still. The same cure trusted by three worlds that never met. The same word, worn smooth, passed hand to hand across every border, until it reached your mouth. The old world and the new world, tied together by one small root. Inside that one small slice are thousands of years of human connection. Strangers meeting, cultures touching. A thin, invisible thread running from ancient forests all the way to the cup in someone's hands. And here's the wonderful part. That person sipping their tea has no idea. To them, it's just ginger just a warm drink on a cold day. But now you know better. Now you know what you're really holding. Every slice of ginger carries one of history's longest journeys, from the forests of Asia to kitchens all around the world. You'll never look at it the same way again.